Alright, tonight I thought I would do a little how-to video. I showed you last night that there was a split wheel on this Commodore, and there was also a wheel that was missing some teeth on the gears. So I got out a couple tools that I thought I would need. This is a pair of flat nose pliers. I've got a Train Night at Dave's pocket screwdriver and a wheel puller. Probably seen this type of wheel puller. It's actually a converted faucet handle puller, and it works quite nice. The jaws have been ground down nice and smooth. We may not need it, but I'll have it ready to go anyway. And the last item I have is this wooden block, and you'll see later that this may come in handy for putting the wheels back on. The first thing I'll do is remove the screws. There's one on each side. That's the only thing holding the motor in. So flip it over and repeat. So now I've got both screws out. The motor should lift off. This is kind of hard to do with one hand. I need a tripod. So there's the motor. It's still hooked to the headlight wire with this fawn stock clip. So I will remove that, and then we'll get to the wheels. Loose. And since I want to get the front wheels loosened, there's the crack. I have two choices. I can't pull the wheel off because the drive rods are in the way. I can either take my flat nose pliers and straighten those two tabs and take the front off, or if the wheels are loose enough, I can just pull this off. And the wheel is loose enough, so I can pull that off. I can pull this off. Note that there are some bronze bushings right there. Don't lose those. They're indexed by that little, so much grease on there you can't tell, but they are indexed. This one stayed in. So now we have free access. I'm sure this wheel will come off easily, and it does. So I need a wheel that looks just like this. So spokes, no gear. Then on the other side, I need spokes with a gear. Oh, you can see there's more fracturing on that than I realized at first. So let's go over the parts bin and see if we can find some replacements. Alright, over by the door, I've got my Marx parts in these orange bins. And if I remember right, second drawer from the bottom. Yes. So here are some spoke wheels. That looks like a good candidate for the one that doesn't have a gear. This one has a boss. I don't need that one. There is, nope, that doesn't have a gear. That one's got a boss for a drive rod. I don't want that. That one's got a chip. Probably should avoid that. I hope I don't run out of choices here. Oh, I like this one. Oh. Well, maybe. It looks like the gears are worn down. But I like the color. It looks more like what's on there already. So I'll give that a go, and back to the workbench. So I've got my four wheels laid out. They're pretty good matches. And noticed that the bronze bushing bearing came out of the center of this gear. So since I want the bronze to spin on this shaft, I'm going to clean this off and I'm going to glue it back in here. I could go get a new one, but I like to use the original parts if that's at all possible. It turns out that I will need the wheel puller. This is the old wheel, and you can see that I'm all set up to turn the handle and push the original axle out of the old wheel. One of the other things I want to do while I'm here is clean this grunge off. So I've removed the phosphor bronze bearings because you don't want to get cleaner on those. And I'm going to remove these two as well, just to clean some grunge off. So that'll be my next step. This is one of the cleaners that I use for the reverse units, and I use it sparingly to clean off some of the grunge. I probably in this case would spray it on a towel, just so I'm not soaking everything, and then wipe off the. That comes off pretty clean. All right, the side frames cleaned up pretty good, but I noticed that one of the nuts was loose when I took this apart, so I'm going to check everything, because you can't get to these nuts because they're behind the wheel, so now's the time. One other little pointer is if sometimes your locomotive doesn't run, always make sure this screw is tight. This screw grounds this brush to the frame, and if that screw isn't tight, this locomotive won't run. Brush and cleaned all the wheels, front and back. You never know what's going to get on the back of these axles. I found tinsel wrapped in there, I found dog hair, cat hair, human hair, carpet fuzz, you name it, it gets in there and you want it out. So I got that all cleaned out. I've cleaned the axle bushings, I've glued in the bearing to the inside of this gear. So make sure you put that in before you put the wheels on. And then you want to make sure that you put the front wheels together first. And the front wheels are the ones without the drive rods. So the gear side is going to go on this side, and the non-geared side is going to go on the other side. I've got the axle cleaned out, and I'm going to press those together. Well, I noticed that this wheel is going to be loose on the axle. So some people swedge these, and that's fine, but I feel like I'm a little bit too strong when it comes to that, so I opt to do super glue. And it doesn't take too much. I'll wipe off the excess, put the axle in, and let it sit for a few minutes, and it'll get nice and tight. Now that the axle's tight, I can put the axle bushing in, make sure the index so it doesn't move. Slide the axle in, turn it over, put the other axle bushing in. Oop, I found some grease. And then find the other wheel. Well, be right back. Well, here's a little side lesson. The reason I was having such trouble getting that axle bushing in was that this wasn't aligned, and if you notice, there's all these little fissures. So basically the wheel had enlarged and the gears were binding on this intermediate gear. And so I took it off, and when I tried to take the axle out, the wheel broke. This wheel shot anyway, so I went over and found another one out of the parts bin. This one turns nicely on the motor, so I'm going to swap this axle out. I just went out to the vise and pressed these two front wheels on to the axle. They're nice and tight. There's a couple of ways that you know that you've got the right gauge. The axle should be flush with the end of the wheel. And also you should have just a little bit of play. I don't know if you can see that back and forth. There's a little bit of play. And then it should, of course, move freely. Much better than the last wheel. I mean, it freewheels. So that's right. It's time to put the back wheels on. First thing you do is slide the drive rod into the bracket there. And see if we can get this through there without... Okay, let's see if that turns freely. Should go down far enough to where it turns the gears. Nothing feels funny. It feels nice and smooth. Now I can turn it around and add the other axle bushing. Make sure the index is correct. This is going on a lot better than the first one when I had a crumbled wheel. Then I'll put this drive rod through the groove there and press this wheel on. Now I've got the wheel pressed on to the back. I'm pleased with the play. I'm pleased with the turning. Everything's moving freely. Now I want to oil the points where everything turns. So I'll go between the bushing and the wheel on the axle. Sometimes I even get the axle right there. I think Marx made the pickup plate so that you could reach those. Also, I like to oil the oil wick, that little piece of felt right there, as well as the pinion gear and the intermediate gear. Sometimes you can actually get behind that with this needle. All right, let's put it back in the body and see how well it runs. Now we're back on the layout. Here we go. Well, as you can see, the Commodore ran fairly well, and I'm really glad I took the time to replace the wheels. I appreciate you watching and hope that you found this helpful. Have a great day.